And with that, we come to the final talk of our session, which is Kali's. The talk is from Ohio State University, and it's IMCOM, Optimized Image Coaddition Pipeline for Roman Weak Lensing Cosmology.
Testing again? Okay. Okay, thank you. So thanks for the introduction. Thank you all for coming. So I understand this is the last talk of today, so I hope this talk can be entertaining because people are exhausted. I'm going to talk about our image combination software called IMCOM. My main co-authors are people at Ohio State or Duke, but I would like to thank everyone who made this work possible, including many of you. Before I go to the next slide, I would like to point out that this background image is produced by IMCOM based on open universe image simulation. So we can see galaxies, bright stars. Unfortunately, no Einstein rings yet, but hopefully in the future. So here's a brief outline of my talk. I'm going to talk about why we are doing this at all, what image coaddition is, why we think IMCOM is good, how we are making it better, and finally discussion. So first, some background. A lot of us are working on either gravitational lensing or cosmology. So I'm happy that our team is working on both. In cosmology, gravitational lensing is of particular interest because it is directly sensitive to the mass distribution, so we can get rid of galaxy bias. In strong lensing, we have nice Einstein rings, but that's not the case in weak lensing. In weak lensing, we only have percent level distortions in shapes of galaxies. That's why we really need high precision measurements of the galaxy shapes. Okay, and then I was told that I need to advertise our software before I talk about the details. So basically, IMCOM can be used whenever you need coaddition. It is optimized, as advertised in the title, for weak lensing cosmology. It is a survey design tool for the Roman high latitude wide area survey because it can tell us how many dithers we need and how much exposure time we need. Hopefully, it will be one of the first segments of our data analysis pipeline. And also, it can be used for other weak lensing surveys as well, although I don't think those people are working on that. But weak lensing is not the only area where IMCOM can be useful. Whenever you can measure PSFs, you can, in principle, use IMCOM. For example, we have 1 plus epsilon talks and 2 pursuits for astroseismology. Epsilon is this part of my talk. So basically, the nominal cadence of the galactic bulge time domain survey is 15 minutes. But what we need for doing astroseismology with red clump stars is 30 minutes. So that's why we can always co-add all pairs of adjacent exposures to get better noise control. That's just an example. So for people doing difference image analysis, I think IMCOM might be useful because it can provide uniform PSF and common pixel grid. Okay, that's enough motivation. I suppose everyone's already motivated. So if you are not familiar with the concept of image coaddition, you may be wondering, why on earth are we co-adding images? But I'm not going to answer that question because that's a question for the RST people. The question I'm going to answer is, why in space are we co-adding images? So basically in space, the PSF, point spread function, is principally characterized by the wavelength of your filter and the diameter of the telescope. So we need to oversample the sky scene to make high precision measurements. However, here's an example PSF in H-band. H-band is probably the band of choice for our wide survey. Because of chromatic effects, we can use the wide filter. So as you can see here, oh, sorry, that's the wrong button. As you can see here, the 4 width at half maximum of the PSF in H-band is comparable to the native Raman pixel size, which is already small, so we are reluctant to make it smaller, and we don't want to narrow down the field of view. So the strategy of the weak lensing survey is to dither our camera and take several exposures and then combine them. That's how we reach oversampling. So then how do we co-add images? Usually through linear combination. So basically here, I is the input signal, T is what we call coordination weights, and H is the output signal. T is independent of I, otherwise it's nonlinear. So linearity is important for basically 2 reasons. First, it's fast because it takes longer to solve nonlinear equations. And second, it allows us to use the same set of weights to co-add other things. For example, noise realizations, so that we can study the noise. And as we do a linear combination of input signals, we are also doing a linear combination of input PSFs like this, using the same weights. So how IMCOM works, in short, is to minimize the discrepancy between this reconstructed PSF and the target PSF specified by the user. So you can choose the target PSF you want. Okay, here are some published work. This is Chris paper 1. Assuming we are having 6 exposures of the same star in Y band, basically we have 2 row angles, and for each row angle we have 3 dithers. And we combine them using both IMCOM and the traditional algorithm for image combination called Drizzle. So Drizzle does not use PSF information. It only uses the geometric relation between input and output PSFs. So what you get is what your telescope sees. As you can see here, the star produced by Drizzle is hexagonal, so probably not very good for shape measurements. However, if we use IMCOM, then it's wrong. As I said here, what you get is closest to what you want to see. And our ultimate goal in weak lensing analysis, I mean the image processing part, is to measure shapes of the galaxies. So what if we measure shapes? We are conducting a stress test with point sources. They are stress tests because for point sources, the undersampling of the native exposures is exaggerated. So this figure is taken from Messiah's paper 2. It plots the 2 components of the ellipticities versus magnitude. Basically, the 2 rows are the 2 components. The first column is co-adding science images with IMCOM. Second column is noiseless image with IMCOM. And last column is Drizzle, science image with Drizzle. So as you can tell from the y-axis ranges of the first and third columns, IMCOM results are at least 1 or 2 orders of magnitude more accurate than Drizzle. So although IMCOM seems desirable, it is not perfect. Principally for 2 reasons. First, our previous implementation has 2 repositories. One is called Fluffy Garbanzo, and the other is called Furry Parakeet. So we have 2 repositories for 1 software, and they both sound like biology. So that's why we refactored it into a unified implementation. And another drawback was it was slow. It was much slower than Drizzle because Drizzle only uses geometric relation. So, and we put a lot of effort to accelerate IMCOM. So compared to the paper 1 production runs, our newest implementation is about 1 order of magnitude faster in terms of number of core hours. In the interest of time, I will not go through the details why these strategies are called those. But here I also listed another strategy called iterative. As you can see, it's slower than Kreisky. So why are we doing new strategies? Because different strategies have different pros and cons. Here's an example why the iterative strategy might be better than the traditional strategy. So here, in the first row, I have the 2D power spectra based on a white noise realization. So basically, the central bulbs are expected because our target PSF is different from input ones. And the big plus signs and the rig, those are artifacts. And then in the second row, I take the azimuthally averaged spectra and bin the, well, basically images according to the mean coverage. Coverage is the number of exposures overlapping with the same region. So as you can see, when the coverage is decent, then all kernels are good. But when the coverage is small, the other strategies may outperform the traditional Kolevsky strategy, which is closely matched to paper one. In addition to new linear algebra strategies, we are also fine-tuning some hyperparameters. For example, as I said, IMCOM users can specify the output PSFs they want. So here we have considered 3 different forms of the target output PSF, all with the same flow width at half maximum. So simple Gaussian, 2 forms of array disks, both convolved with Gaussian to reach the same width. So as you can see, the inner regions seem similar, but the outer regions differ significantly. And when we perform shift measurements based on moments, we can see the differences. With first moment or second moment, the differences are not significant. However, with fourth moment, we can see that the widest obscured array disk performs the worst. So we're also doing a whole bunch of similar hyperparameters. Okay, so finally, key takeaways and other ongoing projects. IMCOM is a linear image combination algorithm which provides control over reconstructed PSF in output images. That's important. We think it's good, and we have been making it better. So other ongoing projects are basically projects led by my co-authors. For example, Catherine, who is not here, is characterizing and mitigating the biasing from read noise. Messiah, who is, well, also not here, is applying shear measurement pipelines to extended objects, basically galaxies. That was hard, so we started with stars. And Emily and Chris have been trying to remove the large diffraction spikes, which are undesirable because we don't want other diffraction spikes from other sources to the objects we are measuring. And finally, another Michael, not Michael Truxell, is doing arrow propagation. So hopefully in the future we can hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that talk. I see there are already questions in the audience, so let's go to first.
Yeah, so it's David Bennett with the Galactic Bulge Time Domain Survey and Roman Galactic Exoplanet Survey PIT. So I'm wondering why you are interested in co-adding the images. You have lots of images, dithered images of the same field. What we've been doing to analyze crowded stellar fields is, first of all, we don't use a PSF, we use an effective PSF, which is the PSF you'd see with the star at any position, and including all the pixel effects in that. And then we just analyze a separate, do a joint analysis of all the separate images, and thereby not doing any resampling at all for these undersampled images. It seems to me that preserves the PSF information a lot better than any sort of co-addition scheme that I can think of. I don't really understand how yours works, but.
Oh, well, actually, we haven't explored that possibility very much yet. So I think the point is that by removing the effect caused by different PSFs, maybe we can do better photometry. And in other cases, we want to do coordination to reduce noise, basically taking a weighted average. So yeah, that's just potential future work.
Okay, well, I mean, you don't add any noise by doing the images. You know, fitting all the images at the same time to get the shapes. You know, if you have a good model for this effective PSF, then you can take that out.
I'm not sure if I heard the question, sorry.
I think it was more of a comment, but we have another question I saw at the back there.
So I can say a little bit about why this is a desirable strategy for weak lensing, which is that when you're trying to fit galaxies, we do what you describe right now on many ground-based surveys, where we fit, you know, all of the simultaneously fit all the images at once. And you're right that there's a sense in which that strategy is not lossy, but it adds a lot of complexity. In particular, when we're trying to fit extended sources for which we don't have perfect models, it's better to be doing those kinds of measurements at high signal to noise. And so while, you know, this strategy loses very little information because, you know, what Kylie's implemented is close to optimal, and it simplifies a lot of the downstream analysis tasks significantly. The question I was going to ask is that I'm wondering how the modeling strategy that you've proposed here interacts with chromaticity in the PSF, and if you have thought much about how to handle that for image combination.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Have you thought about the consequences of the fact that the PSF is dependent on the color of the star or galaxy?
Oh, yes.
The chromaticity effects.
Oh, sorry. So we have been thinking about the chromatic effects. So basically, Chris has come up with a way to remove, if not, at least reduce the chromatic effects. We are currently assuming that the SED is flat, but in reality, that's not the truth. So our tentative plan is to do one coordination first, and then we use that coordinated image to decompose the input images into 3 or 4 components with different SEDs, and then we do coordination again so that the chromatic effects are at least mitigated.
Okay, thank you.
Another question, we've got Robbie at the back there.
Hi, so first off, really cool, interesting talk. So my question's specifically about point sources and the comparison between Drizzle and IMCOM. From the plot you showed, the impression I get is that when the PSF is oversampled, Drizzle seems to perform a little bit better. Is that correct? Or am I misunderstanding?
So when the input PSFs are already oversampled, we don't have directly related tests. But I think what you said is true.
Okay, thank you.
Tom Barkley at the back.
So is it fair to say that you're saying IMCOM is universally better than Drizzle? Like, are there situations where it's not? And if it's true, does that mean any data pipeline should be using IMCOM, not
Well,
Drizzle?
That is my hope. So, okay, so I realized that I didn't mention the empirical kernel yet. So basically, the empirical kernel, like Drizzle, is also only using geometric relations. It is as fast as Drizzle, and it has a benefit because it can produce output files with the same format as other kernels of IMCOM. So yeah, that's how I plan to defeat Drizzle.
Defeat. Michael Woodford at the front here.
What do you create as the variance or covariance planes, or variance plane or covariance cube or something that is a result of these?
I'm sorry, are you talking about the covariance of shears of galaxies?
No, I just mean the pixels.
Oh, you mean these plots?
Thanks, David.
And I'm sorry, what was your specific question?
So you make an image,
Yes.
and you start with a bunch of images that had variance planes attached. Maybe those variance planes were just the image because we're in a pure Poisson region, but generally they're a little more complicated. You combine to make an image, but if I want to do detection or understand what's happening or what the correlations are, I'm also interested in the variance and the covariance in that plane.
Covariance.
Photon noise, yeah.
You mean like Poisson noise, the covariance of Poisson noise?
Yes.
So basically, our open universe simulations do include Poisson noise, but we don't have the version without Poisson noise. So we haven't conducted directly related tests. But yeah, I think our work on noise has been focused on lab noise.
Any other questions from the audience?
Sorry, I have one last sentence. So basically, Poisson noise injection is one of our future projects, but we have many future projects. So not sure if we can meet it before the launch.
Okay, let's please thank the speaker again.